Liam adjusted the straps of his heavy backpack and took a deep breath. The cold mountain air filled his lungs as he looked up at the steep path ahead. He was deep in the Colorado Rockies, far from any marked trail or common climbing spot. This was one of the most remote areas he had ever explored. The sky was clear, and the wind was light, a perfect day for climbing. Liam wasn't just hiking for fun. At 38 years old, he had spent most of his adult life in the wilderness. He was a professional climber and guide, known for taking people on difficult mountain adventures. But this trip was different. He was alone and on a mission, creating a new documentary about untouched climbing routes across the U.S. He carried a camera mounted on his helmet, a GPS, and a small drone to help him film parts of the climb from above. The trail he followed that morning didn't appear on any modern maps. He found it in an old climbing guide from the 1970s buried in the back corner of a used bookstore. The book described the area as untouched, brittle, and not for beginners. Liam had been looking for places just like this, wild, unvisited, and full of mystery. By noon, he reached the base of a sharp cliff made of reddish rock. It didn't look very stable. Pieces crumbled under his fingers as he touched the surface. But Liam had trained for climbs like this for years. He tied in his ropes, checked his safety gear twice, and began his slow ascent up the wall. As he climbed higher, the wind picked up a little, brushing dust across his face. He focused on his hands and feet, moving slowly and carefully. The silence of the mountain was calming, broken only by the sound of his boots against stone and the soft clicks of his gear. About halfway up the cliff, something strange caught his eye. At first, he thought it was just a shadow or an odd shape in the rock. But as he looked closer, he noticed something unnatural. There were straight lines, too perfect to be made by nature. They looked like cuts, as if a blade had sliced into the stone. The more he stared, the clearer it became. The lines formed a rectangle. Liam paused, hanging quietly from the rope. His boots braced against the cliff. He wiped sweat from his forehead and reached for the small camera around his neck. He zoomed in on the shape. It was a doorway, a large black opening in the side of the cliff. The edges were sharp and square. It looked man-made, like it had been carved decades ago. But why? Who would build a door in the middle of a mountain wall so far from any road or path? The doorway was partially covered with dirt, plants, and fallen stone, almost like it had been sealed off a long time ago. If you weren't climbing right next to it, you would never notice it. Liam's heart began to race. He'd found abandoned cabins before, even hidden caves, but never anything like this. A doorway carved into the cliff face was not normal. His curiosity took over. He knew he had to get closer. Whatever it was, someone had gone to great effort to hide it. And now he had stumbled across it by accident. This climb just became something much bigger than he expected. Liam's hands were still shaking a little as he reached into his backpack and pulled out his drone. He needed to see the area around the doorway more clearly. After launching the drone into the air, he guided it carefully toward the strange black opening in the cliff. The small camera on the drone showed the doorway from all angles. It was definitely real, not a shadow, not a trick of the eye. The entrance was about 6 feet tall and 3 feet wide, almost like a hidden tunnel or storage space built into the rock. He flew the drone closer, hoping to peek inside. But the space beyond the doorway was pitch black. The camera couldn't see anything past the entrance. Still, the footage confirmed what Liam already suspected. This was not natural. Someone had built this into the mountain, but who? And why? Liam landed the drone and took a deep breath. He knew what he was about to do next came with risk. The cliff was brittle, and the doorway was on a narrow ledge about 20 feet to the right of his current climbing path. It would be tricky to reach. Still, his instinct told him this was important. He might never get this chance again. He carefully rigged a new anchor above his current position and adjusted his rope system. Slowly and with full focus, he began moving sideways across the rock wall. The ledge was thin, just enough space for one boot at a time. His heart pounded, but his training kept him steady. Finally, he reached the ledge and stood just a few feet from the strange doorway. Up close, he saw that it was sealed shut with old wooden beams, wrapped with rusted metal bars. Rebar from construction work decades ago. Time had taken its toll. The wood was soft and cracked. The metal was corroded. Liam pulled out a small crowbar from his climbing gear, something he usually used for gear adjustments or emergency repairs. He wedged it into the cracks between the beams and began to pry. The wood groaned under pressure, then split with a dry snap. Piece by piece, he removed the barrier. When the last beam fell away, the doorway stood open. A wave of musty, stale air rushed out like the breath of something long buried. The smell was thick with dirt, metal, and time. Inside was complete darkness. Not even a sliver of light touched the walls. Liam turned on his headlamp and took one step forward. Liam took a deep breath and stepped into the doorway. His headlamp lit up a narrow concrete tunnel that stretched deep into the cliff. The floor sloped slightly downward, and the air inside was heavy and cold. Every breath felt damp and stale, like the space hadn't been opened in decades. As he walked slowly forward, the smell became stronger, a mix of rust, mildew, and wet stone. Water dripped from the ceiling in some places, landing in small puddles on the ground. The walls, made of rough concrete, were covered in patches of dark mold and green moss. Liam kept his steps light and careful. The silence was almost too perfect. Every small sound, a drop of water, the scuff of his boot, the creak of his backpack, echoed down the tunnel, making him feel like he wasn't alone. After about 20 feet, his light caught something on the side of the tunnel. He moved closer and saw a rusted metal rail, like the kind used to guide carts in old mines. Nearby, leaning against the wall, was an old shovel, its wooden handle cracked and moldy. A small metal cart sat on the track, its wheels fused with rust. On the ground beside it were a pair of worn leather boots, soaked and partly covered in dirt and moss. Liam knelt down to inspect them. The boots were old, very old, and looked like something from the 1940s or earlier. The stitching had almost disappeared, and the soles were cracked. But they were real. Someone had been here before. As he stood up, something on the wall caught his attention. In faded white chalk, nearly erased by time and moisture, were the words, "Property of U.S. government. Keep out." Liam's heart skipped a beat. Government property? Hidden deep in a mountain? This wasn't just a random abandoned tunnel. Something serious had happened here. And whatever it was, someone clearly didn't want it to be found. After spending a few tense hours inside the tunnel, Liam decided not to go any deeper for now. He marked the location on his GPS, took several photos, and carefully climbed back down the cliff before nightfall. His mind was racing the whole time. What exactly had he just walked into? That evening, back at his base camp, Liam sat inside his small tent with a notebook and laptop. The quiet hum of the nearby river was the only sound as he began his research. He had downloaded some offline documents about the region, but now that he had a signal, he searched for more. He looked up government projects, mining history, and Cold War activity in that area of the Colorado Rockies. It didn't take long to find something strange. In an old archive of public records from the 1950s and 60s, Liam came across references to a government facility built deep into the mountains. Some records labeled it a rare mineral research center, while others called it a civil defense bunker meant to protect officials in case of a nuclear attack during the Cold War. But all the files stopped suddenly around 1964. No clear reason was given. The location, the funding, and the people involved just disappeared from the documents. Liam kept digging. Then he found something that made his heart beat faster. Several newspaper clippings from 1964. The headlines were old and yellowed, but the words were clear. Geologist team. Missing in Rockies. Last seen near Eagle Ridge. 6 experts disappear while surveying mountain facility. Search ends with no clues and high-altitude mystery. Eagle Ridge. That was the area Liam was exploring. The articles talked about a team of 6 scientists and engineers who vanished during a government-funded project. Despite searches by the military and local rescue teams, they were never found. No bodies, no gear, no answers. Liam leaned back in his seat, staring at the screen. He had just walked into the exact place where these people had vanished, and it had been sealed off and forgotten ever since. Liam couldn't stop thinking about the tunnel. Even while eating or checking his climbing equipment, his mind kept going back to the dark entrance carved into the cliff, and those missing geologists from 1964. After 2 days of rest and planning, he packed up his base camp and returned to the site. This time, he came fully prepared. He brought stronger lights, extra batteries, a professional camera, and safety beacons to mark his path inside. He also brought a second rope system and a small first aid kit just in case. The climb back to the ledge felt easier now that he had done it before. Once again, he opened the old doorway and stepped into the cold, damp tunnel. The air was still heavy with the smell of rust and old stone, but he didn't stop this time. He moved forward, placing a beacon every few minutes to make sure he wouldn't get lost. As he reached the end of the first corridor, he found a narrow doorway on the left, almost hidden by fallen debris. He cleared it carefully and stepped into a larger room. It looked like an old bunkhouse. There were metal bed frames lined up against the wall, some with thin, moldy mattresses still on them. Empty tin cans, likely old food rations, were scattered on the floor. On a small table lay a few scientific notebooks, their pages damp and faded. Old tools and dusty equipment, possibly for measuring rocks or chemicals, were stacked in the corners. As Liam explored, he noticed something strange. A section of the wall looked newer than the rest. He tapped on it, hollow. Curious, he pressed around the edges, and suddenly, a part of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow stairwell that descended deeper into the mountain. He carefully stepped down. The temperature dropped sharply. His breath turned visible in the light. This lower area felt different. Wrong. There were signs of panic everywhere. Chairs knocked over, maps torn off the walls, and burnt papers in metal bins. Several file cabinets stood open, with papers either shredded or missing. A cracked mug lay on the floor next to a broken pair of glasses. Liam slowly looked around, heart pounding. Whatever happened here, it had happened fast, and the people inside had clearly left in a hurry. Liam walked carefully through the lower level of the facility. The cold air made his hands stiff, and the silence felt heavier down here. The smell of burnt paper and mold was strong. He moved slowly, checking every corner for clues. In one of the back rooms, behind a broken desk, Liam noticed something sticking out from under a pile of rubble. He reached down and pulled out a damaged leather notebook. The cover was cracked and covered in dust, but the name was still clear. Dr. Harold Keane. Liam opened the journal slowly. Some pages were wet and unreadable, but many entries had survived. The handwriting was neat at first, written in blue ink. The early pages talked about studying underground water systems. Dr. Keane and his team had come to this mountain to explore natural water movement through rock layers. They were using sensors, chemicals, and drills to learn more, but after a few weeks the tone changed. One entry said, "Gas pockets found. High pressure. Dangerous release risk." Another page mentioned small earthquakes shaking the tunnel walls. Then things got stranger. One line read, "The mountain groaned again last night. Felt like it was alive." The handwriting became messier. Some words were hard to read. Sentences were short, broken. Something's wrong with the air. Heard voices in the dark. Lights flicker even when the power is off. In one of the final entries, Dr. Keane wrote, "So, I think the mountain is breathing. I know that sounds crazy, but we all felt it, like it's alive." Liam closed the journal slowly, his skin tingling with unease. This wasn't just a failed science project. The team had found something they didn't understand, something possibly dangerous, and it had affected them deeply. Liam now understood why everything looked like it was left in a panic, and part of him wondered, had something inside this mountain truly scared them away? Liam continued moving deeper through the cold, silent tunnels. The air felt even heavier now, and a strange pressure built in his ears as he walked. He followed a narrow hallway that led to what seemed like the very bottom of the facility. At the end of the path, he found a thick metal vault door. It was massive, taller than him and several feet wide. The door was scratched and rusted, with bolts and locks that had been forced shut long ago. It looked like no one had touched it in decades. The area in front of the vault was a mess. Part of the ceiling had collapsed, leaving chunks of concrete and rock on the floor. Behind the vault, Liam noticed a dark opening in the wall, a shaft that dropped straight down into blackness. It was impossible to see the bottom. Cold air rose from it, and it smelled sharp, like metal and chemicals. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small handheld meter that measured radiation. He didn't expect anything strange, but when he turned it on, the numbers climbed slightly. Not dangerous, but not normal either. Then he saw the writing on the vault door. Painted in large, messy red letters were the words, "Do not open. We couldn't contain it." Liam froze. He stared at the words for a long time, his flashlight flickering slightly as the cold made the battery weaken. His heart pounded. He stepped closer and put his hand on the door. What did they try to contain? Gas? Chemicals? A natural force? Part of him wanted to open it, to find the truth, but another part told him clearly, don't. He thought about the journal, the panic in Dr. Keane's writing, the burned maps, the missing team. This door had been sealed for a reason. A good reason. Liam backed away slowly. He knew some mysteries were better left unsolved, and some doors should never be opened. Liam left the mountain the next morning, still thinking about what he had seen. The cold tunnel, the broken equipment, the old journal, and the huge vault door with the warning. It all stayed in his mind like a puzzle with missing pieces. Back at home, he looked through all the pictures and video clips he had taken during his exploration. Part of him wanted to share everything online. People would be amazed. The story would go viral. But another part of him remembered the strange feeling he had down there. The fear, the silence, and the warning signs. He decided to report it, but without using his real name. Liam sent a detailed message to a local geology department, along with some images. He also contacted the Bureau of Land Management, which takes care of public lands and federal land safety. He told them about the sealed tunnel, the abandoned site, and the strange radiation levels. He didn't mention his name, phone number, or exact location. Just enough for them to find it. Then he waited. A few days later, Liam received a message in his inbox. It didn't have a name or signature. It simply said, "We appreciate your concern. For your safety, please do not return to that site." That was it. No questions, no thank you, no explanation. 2 weeks later, Liam checked the official maps of the area online. The trail he had followed, the one from the old climbing book, was now gone from the map. The region around the cliff was marked as restricted land. Even the old trailhead on satellite images had been blurred out. The mountain had been quietly closed off. No news reports, no public statements, just silence. Liam realized then that some secrets were not meant for the public, and someone, somewhere, wanted to keep that door closed forever. Liam sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen. Dozens of video clips, voice notes, and pictures were open in front of him. The footage from the tunnel, the journal pages, the sealed vault, it was all there. He had everything he needed to tell the full story. If he posted it online, people would listen. The mystery of the mountain would go public. But there was a problem. He was afraid. The message he had received, the warning not to return, kept playing in his mind. Someone knew what he had found, and they clearly wanted to keep it quiet. Liam felt stuck. Part of him wanted to tell the truth, to let the world know what was hidden in the mountain, but the other part told him to be careful. Was it worth the risk? Would people believe him anyway? After thinking for a long time, Liam made a decision. He opened his editing software and began working on his footage. He removed the parts that showed the exact location of the cliff. He kept the story real, but not complete. He shared the final version of this story online. He closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair. Liam had chosen a line between truth and silence. He didn't break the secret, but he didn't hide it completely either. And in his heart he knew, some mysteries should be remembered, even if they are never solved. And now he had stumbled across it by accident.
You like this touching and surprising story? If so, we invite you to leave us a comment expressing your opinion. If you want to continue enjoying inspiring stories like this one, subscribe to our channel or check out the other videos shown at the bottom of the screen. Thank you for your cooperation.